Ghosts are real. This much I know. There are things that tie them to a place very much like they do us. Some remain tethered to a patch of land, a time and date, the spilling of blood, a terrible crime. But there are others that hold on to an emotion, a drive, loss, revenge, or love. Those, they never go away.
What's that movie? Is it a hit? Don't ask her like she'll say, I haven't seen it.
Welcome to the Haven't Seen It podcast. This is the podcast where we bring people on the show and we get them really drunk and they tell me about a movie that I've never seen before. I'm Alanka Zach.
And I'm Will. I am also here.
Hell yeah. Boys and girls, welcome to the show. Welcome also to our guest.
Hello.
Yes, you heard him. You heard his voice. That is Danny Morrison, aka the host of the YouTube channel Mutant Museum, or what is it? Danny Morrison's Mutant Museum?
Mr. Morrison's Mutant Museum is like the full formal title, but
damn it, Will.
Just look for Mutant Museum on YouTube, all lowercase, you'll find it.
All right, we'll shout that out at the end of the episode as well.
I'll tell curious listeners a little bit more about the museum.
Yeah, somebody should get it right. Am I right? God, I can't believe Will just fumbled that so hard.
I got it right.
I've never made any mistakes on the show ever.
No.
I'm captivated because I mentioned this a little earlier, you guys. Today is a movie that I've been told is not scary, but
it's kind of scary.
Okay, so it's scary. So anything with like a bit of a scare factor in it to me is scary. But guess freaking what, you guys? I haven't seen the movie. Guess who else hasn't seen the freaking movie?
I haven't. I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah, Danny hasn't seen the movie. So,
We'll just guess.
We're making really good guesstimations based off the trailers. That's all. No, you guys. Will hasn't seen the movie.
I have not. I've not seen this movie. I won't say that I got to a point where I got really busy and I was like, I have never seen this movie. Maybe I should just leave it and not watch it. And I think this is a good idea. I haven't seen this movie. I'm very curious about it. I do also like Guillermo del Toro as well. I don't know why I never saw this movie. I think probably it just kind of came out in a weird time, and I just didn't really notice it.
What?
I think I saw this one. I think I saw it twice in theaters, actually. Because I love Guillermo del Toro. I am unreasonably proud of the fact that I have the same birthday as him.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Sometimes I feel like he's making movies just for me, and that I am his target audience exactly, which is nonsense, of course, but.
Well, is it? It's not. Can we say his name really slowly so that those of us at home
Guillermo del Toro. He is from Mexico.
No, I know. I just wanted to make sure everybody else.
Call him Will. It's the same name.
Will? Yeah. Is it actually?
That one, Guillermo, William.
Guillermo?
That won't get confusing at all.
Will hasn't seen the movie, but Will directed it or made it or something. He did something. Let's not talk about how bad I am.
Willie del Toro.
Willie of the Bull.
Yeah. I'm actually a little surprised that, Will, you think that you may have not noticed this when it came out, because I, of all people, saw the trailer and was like, I want to see it, because it looked, again, spoopy, and it had Loki guy in it, and it had Mia Stoker lady in it, and it looked just terrifying. So, like, I'm a little confused, but I'm also curious because you made the drink, so I'm wondering how you even, had it come to be with no knowledge.
I was inspired by red tones, and whatever was left over from previous episodes. But what Alenka doesn't know is I may have chose the ingredients, but our guest today, Mr. Morrison, has actually named this drink.
Yes, it's called Red Clay.
Red Clay.
Red Clay. I'm told that is a reference to the movie.
Yeah,
Red Clay.
It's very important for the movie.
And if you want to make this at home, it has whiskey, grenadine, and a dark red juice of whatever you want. I've chosen dark cherry juice. I believe Danny has a cranberry juice.
Cranberry cherry.
Cranberry cherry.
Get it right.
And Alenka, what kind of juice did you choose for your drink?
I went with dark cherry too because I thought something with the cherries might be appropriate. I also put in some company makes some whiskeyed cherries, so I got one of those in there too because I thought it was the cherry was the theme.
Then you are the official drink then.
I am.
Yeah, that sounds like the best
of the
version.
episode.
Oh, nice. Okay, sick.
Now, if there's some way we could drink it out of like a brick well-shaped cup, that would really add.
Ooh.
I don't know.
I guess I'll Photoshop that.
So,
yeah, okay. We can do that.
I would love to guess a little bit about this movie. Maybe Will and I can riff off each other for this because, okay, let me think for a hot second.
So from just the trailers, what do you think this movie is?
Just from the trailers? Because I kind of want to piece in the little titty bits that you've been saying.
Okay, the trailers and hints you've gathered elsewhere, including from me.
Okay, because I already kind of forget what has been said, to be quite honest. From the trailer. Okay, so it's red. So I was like, okay, blood. This is going to be like, going to have some blood going on in this movie.
I'm pretty sure there's a haunted house.
Yeah, like some sort of scandal. Haunted, I think. Oh, definitely. Some sort of supernatural element.
Mm-hmm.
Mia is the wife. She gets married to this
Mia
guy.
Wasikowska?
Yeah, say your name just a little slower, though, so that everybody...
I could be saying wrong. I think it's Wasikowska.
Oh, thank goodness.
It's a Polish name, but she's Australian, so I don't know how she says it.
God.
Wasikowska?
Waska? Oh, I thought it was a W.
I work on a Polish radio show, but I know nothing about Polish, so...
Oh my God.
I know that you pronounce W's like they're V's, and that's it.
Okay, I'm going with it. My dad's Eastern European, and he says vodka as wodka, so maybe they switch the W's and the V's. So I'd believe
like in Star Trek with the nuclear vessels.
Yeah, I don't watch stuff, so.
Okay, don't worry.
Guys, you can't make references to Alenka or else she will not get them.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
All I know how to do is make references.
I'll catch some of them. I'll catch a few.
A few.
But yeah, I feel like she gets tricked into marrying this guy that owns this big old house, and he's like, come live in my house forever. And then we said something about red clay, pink.
And Loki's the guy. I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy.
Tom Hiddleston.
I think he's bad. He's a bad boy, I think. He's a bad boy, which is what enticed Mia. She's like, oh. And then maybe there's a curse, some old lady in the house. Maybe it's his mom. And she's like, you need to find a good woman. And that woman has got to dig in the ground.
I think this is just turning into a period rom-com now.
Or possibly
and
Psycho.
Ultimately, it turns into Tom Hiddleston just wants his mom to approve of his new wife. And in the end, she does. And
that would be so much sweeter than what we got.
Also, I assume because it's Guillermo del Toro that there is freaky deaky monsters and makeup and crazy prosthetics and all that. And also Doug Jones is probably in this movie.
Doug Jones is in this movie.
So I didn't even actually know that.
For those who don't know Doug Jones is in most of Guillermo del Toro's movies. He is a tall, skinny man.
Oh, yeah, I know he is.
Yeah, he's great at playing monsters and stuff and working under heavy prosthetics. So he was the sexy creature from the Black Lagoon in Shape of Water. He was the pale man and the faun in Pan's Labyrinth. He was the sexy creature from the Black Lagoon in the Hellboy movies. There's a motif here.
He is,
and he's also been on like
Buffy the Vampire
Slayer, and
he is this generation's Boris Karloff, right?
Oh yes, I think that is a spot on comparison. All right, so let me grab my 2 extensive notes here.
Well, we always like to start off by me asking you, the guest.
It has to be Will.
It always has to be me. How does this movie start?
This movie starts with the Universal Pictures logo except everything is tinted red. It is a spooky,
no
bloody,
way.
dark red.
See, I knew it was red.
And you can
Gross.
hear a scary child singing.
Nope.
Scary
Ooh.
children's voices. And then we fade to white, and we see Mia Wasikowska standing in the snow, and she's wearing this giant, frilly white dressing gown, and she's got a lot of blood on her. And there's blood in
No.
the snow, and there's
No.
a big cut on her face.
No.
And she says in voiceover, "Ghosts are real. This much I know."
I
Ooh,
hate
I think
this
I heard
movie
that from
already.
the trailer.
Yeah. Fuck,
That was in the
I'm
trailer, I
scared.
think.
Fuck, I
And
want to
then-
see it because I'm scared.
And then we fade back to like many years earlier, and she's like 9 years old, and it's her mother's funeral, and she's narrating in voiceover, telling us about how
it's her
her mother died of the black cholera.
Which is
I don't know, the cholera. It's bad. It's a disease. Very
It's like
popular
what
in the
time place does this
1880s.
Yeah, it's like
this is an old movie.
COVID-19 in the 1880s, basically, or
Most of the
taste,
movie is
Will.
most of the movie is set in 1901, so I would guess this
Okay.
flashback is sometime in the 80s. 1880s.
the
I should say.
1880s. Yeah,
1880s.
Great.
So,
there was a
like,
different kind of
Victorian
the
glam
cure
rock
back
and-
then.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
The cure for cholera, which Mom didn't get. So,
Ooh.
and apparently cholera, like, completely... Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Fuck
yes.
Cholera completely fucks you up. So she's saying in the narration, like, "Father insisted on a closed casket funeral, and I didn't get to say goodbye." And we can see the casket is being carried up to this giant, awesome, gothic as fuck headstone.
no.
And everyone's got their black umbrellas because it's always raining in movie funerals.
Why can't it just be bright and sunny, you know?
And
You gotta
then
set the mood
we,
properly.
Yeah.
you do, because it's got to rain, because rains are like tears, and it's
Actually,
Symbolic.
side note,
Yeah.
it wasn't dark and rainy at a funeral in Grey's Anatomy. I'm bringing up Grey's Anatomy every chance I get on this podcast because it's all I'm watching right now.
Okay.
But
in
there was
Twin
a funeral
Peaks, the-
for a very major character in that show, and it was not rainy. It was pretty sunny out, as
Well,
I
I'm
recall.
not
Twin
gonna
Peaks, there's a
watch-
funeral episode, and it's sunny. But
Twin Peaks. I'm
That's
not
like my
going to
favorite
watch
TV show.
the show to either of the things you said, just so you guys know. But Will, mostly, tell me what major character dies. I just want to
Oh.
spoil it for whoever's listening.
Okay, well, spoiler alert.
Nah.
If you haven't watched up to season, I think it's 6 of Grey's Anatomy, the most beloved intern / resident dies, and that is George.
I could care less.
see, I'm picturing
Continue on
George
with the movie.
Costanza because I've just been
Me
watching a lot of
too.
Seinfeld lately.
That would actually make that. It would be.
This was supposed
that
to
would
be the
make Grey's
summer of
Anatomy.
George.
Aw.
They finally killed Independent George.
Now I care.
And here's
Anyway,
a
back to the movie.
Twin Peaks spoiler: Laura Palmer dies. Okay, so back to the movie. After the funeral, so then there's something that old movies do to transition between scenes. You don't see it much anymore, but where it's almost like a star wipe, except it's like the whole screen turns black, except a little circle around the face of the sad character.
Oh.
And then it like
Ooh.
zooms back out
Oh.
from there, and it's moments.
Mm.
It's later. So
Mm.
she's lying in her bed at night, and she can't sleep, and everything has this like weird red and green lighting scheme, and it looks like one of those Italian horror movies from the 70s for a second. And then she
Oh,
looks
no.
down the hallway.
Or a laser tag facility.
Sure. Or like Fred Krueger's about to show up.
Oh, true.
And she looks down the hallway from her bed, and you can just see this shadow creeping across the wall.
She's
And-
normal age now, or is this still
No,
flashback?
she's still a kid. She's still a kid.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
This is
And-
after the funeral, basically.
After the night of the funeral.
That night.
Okay.
And it's her mom's ghost walking down the hallway into her bedroom.
No.
And
No.
so, like, we're 2 minutes into the movie. Here's our first ghost,
Go.
which I think her mom is Doug Jones. I'm not 100% sure.
Sorry.
Doug Jones plays the dead mom.
I
I
thought it
think
was
Doug
going to
Jones
be
is
a
her dead
normal
mom.
lady.
So is this a dead sexy mom played by
No.
Doug Jones?
No.
Or- Okay.
No.
what does she
oh.
look like?
Ravaged by cholera, her
Oh,
skull
right.
face.
Yuck.
She's like made of shadows. Everything is like just pitch black, and she's got like this big funeral veil, and she like
Ooh.
creeps up down the hallway and comes to her daughter's bedside and just says, "When the time comes, beware of Crimson Peak."
Yo, I don't like that shit, man. You put goosebumps on my back, and I'm already against the wall, and I feel like I need to be closer to the goddamn wall.
Yeah,
God
you better be
damn
careful.
it.
Your house is leaking, Alenka.
It's also very old, and I'm convinced potentially there is a fucking Continue.
Because we're going to get
my
to some
God.
creepy old house
And is
later.
that now?
No.
Do you think if that's Doug Jones, is that Doug Jones's voice?
It's definitely
I'm
not
sweating.
his voice. And I believe
Okay.
it's in his contract that he's not allowed to have his voice dubbed over anymore, so it might not be him. Because I know that some of the ghosts are him, and some of them are played by another actor named Javier Botet, whose name I
Okay.
could be mispronouncing. And he is...
Can you say it slower so that the people are...
Javier is his first name, but his last name is spelled Botet. I don't know how you say that. He's from Spain, and he's also a big, tall guy who does a lot of monster work in prosthetics. He was in the
I
movie
hate
Wreck.
this
He
movie
played
already.
a zombie. So,
I'm sweating. I'm seriously
all right,
sweating.
and then the little girl gets up. By the way, her name is Edith. I should specify this.
The girl's name?
Edith. That's the
The
name of
main
our heroine.
character's name.
I don't
All
like
Edith
right.
Cushing. And the ghost is gone, but she looks down the hallway where the ghost came from, and it's now full of big black moths. Big
Ew.
old moths.
I don't like moths.
That's fair.
I don't like moths. I've
Are
never
the
seen a
moths
black
played by
one.
Doug Jones?
Probably. No, I think they're CGI. Or maybe real moths. I don't
All
know.
right.
All right, so...
He motion captured
No
that shit.
way.
I know it. Okay.
No, that's Andy Serkis. Doug
Fuck.
Jones don't motion
Okay.
capture.
Ah.
All right, so then we see, this is like the title of the movie comes up, but it's on the cover of a book. We see this big book that says Crimson Peak on it. And the text tells us like 14 years later. And we're in Buffalo, New York. Edith has grown up and is now Mia Wasikowska.
Wait, have we been in the States the whole time?
Yeah. We've been in
Okay,
Buffalo.
this is in the States.
Everyone's
Fair.
got
Okay.
American accents so far.
All right.
And so
Oh.
Edith is going into like this old-timey turn-of-the-century office building, and she's got this big stack of paper. And she runs into her friend Alan McMichael in this building. Alan is Charlie Hunnam, if you know who he is.
Ooh, yes.
Sons of Anarchy,
From,
Pacific Rim.
Sons of Anarchy. Yeah.
Sons of
Googling.
Anarchy. He was in a terrible well, I don't know if it's terrible. I didn't see it, but he was in a King Arthur movie a couple years ago that was supposed to be not that great.
I
He's a-
forget what
he's
you
a
said
pretty
his
boy.
name was, so I won't be looking
Charlie
him up
Hunnam?
anymore.
All right, he's
Okay, I'll look
a
him up.
handsome British man who's doing a not very good American accent in this movie.
Aww.
That's the
Oh, wow.
Which I
funny
hate
thing.
that.
There are not many actors in this movie who are using their real accents. So she runs into Alan McMichael, her friend, who is an ophthalmologist, which is an eye doctor. And he's
Isn't
in
that
this.
an optometrist?
That's also an eye doctor. I
All
don't know
right.
the distinction because I'm neither of those things.
It's a 19th century eye doctor.
Maybe.
Yeah, they dropped the thologist.
It's the 20th century now because it's
Sorry.
1901.
Oh.
Wait. Oh, I always thought the 19th century was the 1900s.
So does that mean we were all born in the 19th century?
Yeah, that's I actually never thought about it like that. Oh, I'm dumb. Okay. Let's keep going.
It's
I
a
also
1900s
thought
eye
that.
doctor.
Okay.
All right, so she runs into her friend, the eye doctor, Charlie Hunnam, who, like, we know from the first second of their introduction, he's got a big old crush on her.
Aww.
And he's in this building because he's setting up his office here. This is going to be where he does his ophthalmology practice. And she's here because she's visiting a publisher with a manuscript of a book she's written, or at least is writing.
Ooh.
That's exciting.
She's a novelist.
Do they
And
make any
Gee,
references
right,
to the
son.
fact that, like, other than Mary Shelley, women don't write? Then
funny you should ask. Moments later, they bump into Alan's
Mary
mother
Shelley.
and sisters. They bump into Alan's mother and sisters who say, like, oh, Edith's too good to ever get married. She wants to be just like our very own Jane Austen and die a spinster, but at least she'll have her books. And she says, well, actually, I'd rather be more like Mary Shelley because she died a widow.
Oh, I knew the reference was going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Really? Why would she want to die a widow? Because she does
I
want to
don't know,
get
it's an
married,
odd
or
thing
because
to
she wants
say.
to get married and kill her husband? Right.
It
I didn't
is.
say
She
she's
kills
a
the
gold
guy. She
digger,
kills
but-
somebody. She kills somebody. She kills someone.
And
Calling it now. We'll see.
So Alan's mom and sisters are all gushing over a British baronet who is in town, and that apparently they think might be interested in one of the sisters whose name is Eunice. A very unfortunate name.
He's not into her.
Wait, a baronet?
A baronet. They in fact ask, what is a baronet? I'm not sure. And Edith says, oh, it's a parasite. A baronet is a fairly low position in the British aristocracy. They usually own a bit of land.
So it's not just baron.
It's not the same as a baron.
Okay.
Lower than
And
a
it's
baron.
not a baroness. Okay.
No,
Lower
baroness
than
is
her.
married to a baron. A baronet does not have a lordship. He's not in the House of Lords, but he does have some land and gets to call himself Sir.
Oh, it's a big hairy animal caught in a net, right?
Yeah, sure. I could
What?
nerd out and go into the history of the baronetcies, but it's not
No,
relevant here.
we're talking about Crimson Peak.
We're talking about Crimson Peak. So, she thinks, she says like, baronets are, it's a kind of parasite that leeches off of other people's hard work.
That's funny.
And then
I like her.
she goes up,
down with capitalism.
down with
What?
feudalism.
You wouldn't be able to survive without capitalism.
Well, she kind of is capitalism because she's middle class and her dad is like this big construction magnate, and the British aristocracy is feudalism. It's the past, man.
Sickening.
And she goes up and meets her publisher, who, first of all, has everyone seen the Robin Williams Jumanji?
I have and
yeah.
I forget.
You remember Robin Williams had like the shitty dad who's like, "You're going to Cliffside Academy, son."
Oh, is it that dude?
It's that dude. He's the publisher.
Oh my
No
God, he's
way.
always
And-
the British dude.
He was also in Anaconda. He got eaten.
Haven't seen
Um,
that.
All right,
Wow.
it's okay. So he's a publisher, and he's flipping through her book, and he's like, "Oh, you've written a ghost story." And she says, "It's not a ghost story. It's a story with a ghost in it. The ghost is a
Like-
metaphor."
Like
And
Ghost Dad.
Yeah, you can. Oh God,
I don't know these references, Will. Fuck.
not Ghost
Uh,
Dad. Oh, you should do an episode on that.
That's just a movie with a ghost in it, you know?
I guess it's a story with a ghost in it. The ghost is a metaphor; it represents the past. And this is Guillermo del Toro, like leaning out of the screen, saying, "Like this is how you should read my movie." And
Basically, like everything after this point, this is the lens you should view it under,
Yeah.
basically.
it's
Okay.
not a ghost story; it's a story with a ghost in it.
Okay, Willie.
And then we just cut to like afterwards, after this interview with the publisher. So that's all we get of Robin Williams' shitty dad. And she's talking to her dad, and she says like, "Oh, he insisted I ruin my story with a love story. He said I should put a love story in it. I bet they never asked the guy writers to put in love stories." And her dad, who is this like, as I mentioned, he's a construction magnate. He says like, "Well, I'm a builder, dear, and I believe you need the right tools. And so I got you a
Oh,
present. It was supposed to be a celebratory present, but here it is anyway." And it's like this fancy gold pen that he bought her.
Ooh.
Cute.
I'm
That probably
loving the
was not
voices.
cheap.
It's great.
Me too. Me too. You're doing very well.
Her dad.
Please
is
don't do any
played-
more ghost voices, though.
Oh, okay.
Please do.
They don't talk a whole
please
lot. Her dad is played by an actor named Jim Beaver, who fans of Supernatural will recognize as playing a character named Bobby. I don't watch the show, but
Me neither.
I've maybe watched one or two episodes. but
okay. He's this
I don't know it that
delightful, grouchy, middle-aged man, and I love him.
Aren't they all?
And she says to her dad, like, "This pen's really nice, and thank you, but I think I want to write on a typewriter because publishers see my handwriting and they know right away I'm a lady, so they pigeonhole me." And her dad's like, "Yeah, I guess that's a good point."
Hmm.
And then we see her, she's in her dad's office at work, and I guess she's a receptionist there. And she's got like her typewriter all set up, and she's like transcribing her manuscript and trying to have it all typed up. And then who should billow into the room but Tom motherfucking Hiddleston?
Woo!
All right.
Loki.
And he says, like, I'm here to meet Mr. Cushing. And she's
That's her dad.
Yeah, that's her
No,
dad.
that's her boss. Oh, that's her dad. Oh,
Her dad.
oh, she's a receptionist at her dad's construction company.
Yeah.
Yes.
pay
And
attention.
her dad's
I
name
was
is Carter
not.
Cushing.
Okay.
And when she realizes that this is the British baronet everyone's been talking about, she's very like snippy and sarcastic with him, and so you know right away they're going to get together.
The guy.
This
What
fucking
about-
guy.
Okay.
Mm.
And then he starts like rifling through her manuscript, and he says like, I say, what is this that you're transcribing? And who wrote this? And she says, I did. And he says like, oh, well, it's quite good, isn't it? And then she
Is
starts
it?
to warm up to him a little bit. I don't know. I haven't read it. And she says, well, I'm having a hard time getting published because nobody wants a story with ghosts in it anymore. And he says, well, you might find things a little... I'm not doing the right accent at all. He says,
I
like,
like it though.
well, where I come from, we take our ghosts very seriously.
Mm.
Ooh,
And then
we
so he
take
goes-
the past very seriously. We
Mm-hmm.
take the past very
Wait.
seriously.
Why do you
'Cause the
gather
ghost-
that?
The ghosts are a
It's
It's
metaphor
a
for the past.
metaphor.
That's what
Yeah,
she
I know, I was
told
listening.
the guy.
I know.
It's a
I know.
metaphor. All right. So then he's giving a presentation to her dad and her dad's board of directors. And he starts talking about clay. Underneath his family home at Allerdale Hall, there is an enormous deposit of red clay. It is
Mm.
high in mineral content and full of iron, so it's really flexible and really strong stuff, and it's great for making bricks.
Wow.
And
So,
unfortunately,
but basically, like half hour into the episode, we've not only said the movie title because the
True.
mother says the movie title, but we've also said the drink name.
Mhm.
This is good. This is good.
This is good.
Oh, heck, we are half an hour in. So he's invented... The clay is really heavy, so it sinks into the earth, and it's hard to get it up. So, so he's invented this, like...
That's what she said. 18th century.
So, Tom Hiddleston, who's... I realize I have not said the name of his character. His character's name is Thomas Sharp. And he is...
Ooh.
Tom playing Tom.
Yep. And he's created
You get too creative there.
a steam-powered digging machine it's steampunk as fuck, and he's got this little miniature of it that he brings to show everyone. And Edith's dad's like, have you tested this before? And he says, well, I have this working prototype. And the dad says, but do you have a full-size one? Well, no, not currently. So what you've brought me is a toy.
Ah,
And he
Yeah.
says,
He showed
I'd be
him.
pissed. I'd be pissed about that.
You've been around looking for funding to make this thing. You've been to London, you've been to Edinburgh, you've been to Milan, and now you're here. And he makes kind of a big point about how, like, in America, we care about effort, not privilege, which might have been the case in 1901, but I doubt it. But it feels very quaint and naive today, certainly.
Sounds very Daniel Plainview.
A little
voiced.
bit, the way I'm doing the voice, yes. And he makes a point. You can tell that there's a little bit of class resentment. He doesn't much care for the aristocracy.
Mm.
And so then it's a couple of nights later, and Alan's family are going to throw a big party for Thomas and his sister, who's in town with him. And we're at the Cushing's house, Edith and her dad. And I just want to take a side note to point out that this house, I don't know where it is exactly, but it's somewhere in Toronto. I think it's near U of
Yeah?
T.
Oh,
I'm sure I've seen it somewhere
Ooh.
before. Most of this movie was shot
Really?
in Hamilton.
Listeners, if you know where this house is, sound
What's
off
it look
below.
like?
Yeah. It's one of those like big old school red stone houses that there's a lot of around U of T.
Right, sure. Yeah.
If you
Mm.
saw it, when I saw the
Okay.
movie in the theater, everyone, upon seeing this house, was just like, oh. And so
No way.
her dad is getting ready for this party, and Edith's not going to come at first. And she's telling her dad, like, oh, you should have been nicer to Thomas. Did you see he had a really nice suit, but it was also really old, and his shoes looked like they've been patched many times. So it's very clear that Thomas does not have. Thomas Sharp has like a title and genteel
No money.
background. He's not got money. He's got what he's inherited, and that's it.
And he's slowly losing it.
It could be that way. He's trying to set up this clay
Not good with his
extraction
money.
company. Well, I don't know how much of it is money he lost and just like gradual decay, but he's trying to set up this company so they can start harvesting this clay, and then they won't be the past anymore; they'll be the future. And Edith does not want to go to this party.
It
Those
won't
are the
be
ghosts
ghosts
come in.
anymore. Oh.
Edith doesn't
Okay.
want to go to this party that they're throwing, but then Thomas shows up at their house and is like,
Creepy.
he
He's a real
I missed
persistent
a bit. He shows up at her before he shows up at her house. Her mom shows up again in the same hallway
Oh.
Oh,
No.
and
God.
says,
Is this now? Are we to assume this is the first time since then, or is this like a regular thing? Is
I
she like,
think-
hey,
I
Hey,
think
girl.
it's the first time because she seems surprised to see her mother's
Ugh.
ghost again.
okay,
And
What
like,
does she say?
Beware of Crimson Peak. And then
She said
Thomas
it again. Oh, I don't like the.
Beware of Crimson Peak. And
I hate it.
Thomas shows up at the house, and he says that, like, I waited for your father to leave, actually, because I want to talk to you alone, and he charms her into coming to the party. It's a mix of his charm and the fact that she doesn't want to be alone if her mom might show up again as a ghost any second.
True.
And,
Mm.
you know, that's a pretty good incentive to get out of the house.
I would say
And
so. Ugh.
so we go to this party, and the first person we see there is his sister Lucille, who is Jessica Chastain.
Okay.
And
Oh
she's-
yeah, I knew she was in this movie.
Yeah, and she's like, normally in most things you'll see her in, she's got like really vivid red hair, but in this movie, much like the naturally fair-haired Tom Hiddleston, her hair is all dark and severe.
Ooh.
Okay.
And she's playing the
Fun
piano.
fact: she is the star of Zero Dark 30, which is basically the height of my favorite genre of movie, which is post 9/11 war political thrillers.
Good
There
lord.
aren't many of those, but there's a few.
So
That's
No,
the one where
and
she and
that's
Chris Pratt have
basically
to
the
catch
height
Bin
of
Laden.
him.
That's
Okay.
the height.
Yeah, basically.
I never saw that one.
Amazing.
And Joel Edgerton. No, not Joel Edgerton's there, and
Isn't
what's
Jason
the other
Clarke
guy's
in
the
that?
guy? Yes, Jason Clarke, Joel Edgerton, and
Who
her,
was in
and Chris Pratt.
Lawless, which also starred Jessica Chastain and Mia Wasikowska.
Whoa.
There we go. Come back around. We came back around.
Yep. All right, so Lucille's playing the piano.
6 degrees of Mia Chesikowska. Okay.
Stop.
Yeah, that's basically her name. Lucille's playing piano, and just when Thomas and Edith show up, and they run into Alan, and she introduces Alan to Thomas, and Thomas introduces Lucille to her. And then he's the hostess, who is Alan's mom, says, like, all right, we're hoping that Mr. Sharp, Sir Thomas Sharp, will show us the European style waltz. And Edith says, oh, I'm so sorry I arrived late. And the mom says, like, it's okay. Everybody has their place, and I'll make sure you find yours.
Whoa, what?
Like in a creepy,
Serious-
whispery voice.
No, but just serious bitch move.
Ooh.
And so Thomas lights a
Oh,
candle.
because she's like lower class.
Yeah. Or something. I don't know. Or at least lower social status.
He lights a candle?
He lights a candle, and he says, the secret to the European style waltz is to make every movement so smooth that the candle is never doused. But to do this, You need a perfect partner. And then he leans into Mia Wasikowska and says, would you be mine? And
I was hoping it'd be like, can you move over while he reaches for somebody else?
I want to dance with Charlie Hunnam. And
Yeah.
so then they start dancing, and it's great, and everyone loves them. And at one point he says to her, like, it's customary to close your eyes at this part, and she says, like, I don't want to close my eyes. And
Ooh,
So
because
what?
she's like
'Cause what?
already in love with him, sort of.
it looks like maybe
Not
she's
quick, eh?
she's definitely a little
Was
fluttery
he-
around this man's.
Is he the Crimson Peak?
Like,
Is that a reference
her
to
life
penis?
is peaking.
Or I don't know. Or does he have a widow's peak haircut? No?
He's got
Okay.
kind of his hair just looks kind of wet throughout the whole movie. It's like slicked back,
His classic
and dyed
look.
black. Yeah, it's a lot like the Loki
Yeah.
look. He just looks kind of damp. He looks like a handsome Tommy Wiseau.
Like a damp dude.
Oh God! But like
Nice.
he is such a suave, good-looking dude. But you're right. When you watch like Avengers and stuff, he's pretty like creepy and damp. You're right. Yeah.
He is. And if you contrast that with something like Kong Skull Island or that Henry V movie he's in, where he gets to be fair-haired and then he's just like handsome and not weird and wet.
He's a moist actor, basically.
He doesn't
I
have
thought
to.
the dark hair looked good.
Okay. I don't think it looks as good on him.
Eh.
Or at least the
That's what
wet
I've
hair
only
doesn't.
seen.
The
So
wet hair doesn't look good on him.
The grease. The
Yeah, I mean,
dirty
he's still Tom
grease.
Hiddleston. He's still handsome AF, but... And
Right.
then, so the whole time they're dancing, her dad has like this uncomfortable look on his face. He's a little suspicious of these English people. So then he arranges to meet with a detective whose name is Mr. Holly. And he says to Holly, I want you to look into the sharps and find out everything you can about these two. And
Who's the detective played by?
the actor's name is Bern Gorman. He was he and Charlie Day were the wacky scientists in Pacific Rim. And he was also the guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's in Dark Knight Rises. He was the guy who was sentenced to death by exile by Cillian Murphy in like the only good scene of that movie.
Oh, shit.
You can choose between death or
Hey.
exile. I choose death. Okay, death by exile. Fuck you. And they set him out on the ice. He's a detective, and he's going to go root around in the Sharps' history. So then, I guess it's the next day, or maybe the same day, and Edith is hanging out with Alan in his office, and he shows her that his hobby is collecting photos of ghosts, which was a real thing around this time.
what?
Ghost photography.
Obscene.
Mostly it was just
What?
optical illusions, historically. So it's
Or like little light orbs and like camera malfunctions.
yeah, because like the camera would take a picture over a long time in those days, so you might get a little bit of an impression on the plate from like something, an earlier picture it had taken. And he's showing her all these
Oh,
pictures
okay.
that are like, it looks normal, but if you put this plate over it, there's a scary face in the corner. And he says
Interesting.
that he's come up with this pseudoscientific explanation, which is that because like photographs work based on like silver and like other minerals in the plate. And he says he thinks that certain minerals in the atmosphere might be able to preserve the images in real life. And he thinks that's maybe what ghosts are. But you can't, only like people with very high level kinds of perception can see them. And he says that
Right.
he says that if a guy is colorblind, he's never seen the colors red or green in his life, but he's going to have to just take it from everyone else that they do exist. And the whole time he's saying this,
Huh.
Edith has this look on her face like, well,
Interesting.
I saw a ghost, so I don't know what
Well,
that
I've
means.
seen him.
I have my own
So
ghost
she
friend.
doesn't tell him or what?
No, she doesn't, about her ghost mom.
She hasn't told anybody, I guess.
And then Alan
Oh, that
says
would
to
give her
like,
a one-way ticket to the insane asylum.
It would,
True.
in 1901.
Right.
So Alan says,
Right.
and insane asylums were not a fun time. Like, they're still not, I'm sure, but they were really not good then. And so Alan, who we've established is totally in love with her. And he says to her, like, I know you're fascinated by this Thomas Sharp mofo, but, like, be careful with this guy. I implore you to proceed with caution.
Oh,
And
he's just the good. He's just like the friend zone dude looking out for.
He's totally friend zoned. And maybe
it's weird.
Maybe. So then the next thing is she goes for a walk in the park with Thomas and Lucille. And the park is, if you've been to Hamilton, Ontario at all, you'll probably recognize this park. There's a big gazebo behind them, and Thomas is talking about how, like, oh, your book's so good, man. I've been reading the chapters you sent me. They're so good. And then as they're walking, Lucille finds this cocoon in the grass. And it's a butterfly. Or it will be a butterfly. It's not yet. And Edith says, like, oh, man, I love butterflies. And Lucille says, we don't have those where I live because all the butterflies, even right now, they're all dying over here because it's winter is coming, and all the butterflies, they have to die. All the beautiful things have to die because it's a savage world. And Edith says, okay, what if you don't have butterflies where you live? Like, what do you have instead? And she says moths, and they eat butterflies because it's a savage world. And she picks a butterfly and, like,
she's really plugging that line.
Yeah, she's just like,
I think she only says it once. I'm plugging that line. Yeah, she's very much like an angsty 16-year-old. Oh, the world is so dark.
Oh boy!
And she picks up a butterfly and she just, like, puts it in the grass, and we get this disturbing close-up of ants swarming all over the butterfly, and they eat it.
Okay.
Ooh, I hate ants too. God.
It would happen that fast. So.
And then we
ants
see
and
Lucy.
moths.
Is that the
I
gore?
don't know if I'm going to watch this movie.
Is that the gore?
Is that the gore?
That's not the worst of it.
Okay.
And then we see
Some of the
Lucille and
gore.
Thomas.
Wait, are the ants played by Doug Jones?
No, they're Woody Allen, actually. They're the Woody Allen ant.
Oh. Ooh, we can't watch this movie now.
I'm gonna.
No, but you can't watch Bug's Life either because it has Kevin Spacey.
Oh, it has both of them?
Yeah,
No,
stop
wait,
it.
never mind.
Ants
Sorry.
has Woody
Woody
Allen.
Allen.
Bug's
Watch
Life has
all
Kevin
of
Spacey.
them.
And you can.
Oh, okay.
Whatever. They didn't make the movies. The Exorcist has an actual serial killer in it. You can still watch that movie. One of the one of the extras is a serial killer.
Yeah. So take that, Will.
Yeah. All right. So
They just were terrible
yep.
people too.
So,
But
and
they
William
didn't kill
Friedkin's a
anyone.
jerk. Yeah. Well, I don't know. So then Lucille and Thomas step behind a tree, and Thomas says, like, are you sure about this? And Lucille says, yeah, I guess so. Do you need the ring? And he says, yes, I'm going to need the ring. And she says, okay, but I need that ring back. And we don't know what they're talking about, but she takes this big red ring off her finger and she gives it to Thomas. And she says, we're not selling this ring, we're buying something with it. And then in the next scene, her dad meets with Holly the detective, who says, I've got this whole manila envelope for you of here's all the weird shit I found.
Ooh, on
And
the Sharpies.
We don't know what's in there. But then we see they're
He's
having
totally seducing his daughter so that he can get funding for his shit. That's what's going to happen. Because he wants to be...
So then they're having
this is just
my
a
guess.
financial Ponzi scheme.
Uh-huh.
That's what this whole movie is.
We're having a dinner party, and Thomas now has the ring that Lucille gave him. And
Yeah.
The dad calls Thomas and Lucille into his study, and he says, like, could I have a word with you both? And he shows them what's in the envelope. We don't really see it.
Mm.
And he says, at first I thought you were just after my money. At first, you've been mixing business with pleasure. You want me to invest in this thing, and you also are after my daughter. That's a bit weird. But, so I didn't like you from the start, and now I feel like I have a good reason not to like you. And Thomas says, does she know? And the dad says, no, but she will if you don't tell her first. So what you're going to do is I'm going to write you this check, and you're going to leave town tomorrow. And the other thing is tonight, you're going to break my daughter's heart. You're gonna tell her to go fuck herself, and you're gonna get out of her life. Which he
Tonight
does.
at midnight.
He does.
Say the words.
At dinner, he announces to everyone that he's going back to England. And then Edith follows him out into the hallway and says, how can you leave? I thought we had something. And he says, your book sucks. And he starts trashing her book and saying, you're trying to write about human emotions and stuff, but I don't think you really know any of that. I think you only know what other writers tell you. And she slaps him in front of everyone.
He's you're a gothic E.L. James.
Well, hopefully better than that. And then we get another of those old-timey zooms.
Okay. So so her dad was like, you got to tell her, or it's up to him to tell her whatever was in the envelope, and he's not telling. So we still don't know. We'll never know. We'll know later, but not
don't know yet. So then in the next scene, it's the next morning, and Dad is at his social club, and he's in the bathroom there, and he's enjoying a shave, and a servant is someone's gonna get him his breakfast.
He's getting killed.
He's got a record playing, and you think he's going to be killed with his own straight razor, but no. Someone comes in and just fucking bashes his head against the sink. And the sink shatters, and his skull just has this giant gaping hole in it. And he's blood goes down the drain like in Psycho. And he's fucking dead. He is so dead. They bashed his skull in.
Dead boy.
Elsewhere,
get him out of the way so that he can take her daughter.
Elsewhere, Edith receives in the mail her the pages of the manuscript that Thomas had sent her back, that she had sent to him. He's sending them back, and he sends a letter saying, "I'm sorry. Your father didn't think that I should be with you because I'm poor." So he says, "Your father thought that I was just after the money, and because I'm poor that I shouldn't be hanging around you. And I promise that's not true. I'm not just after the money, but your dad bribed me to break your heart last night." And she's like, he still loves me. And she runs to the hotel. And he's checked out, but he's still there.
But he's after, that's even more money. He got money, and he got bribed to, it's all money. He just wants the money.
He's not telling her something. And she runs into him in the hallway, and then he sweet talks her and tells her again pretty much what the letter said. Your dad bribed me, I didn't want to. And then these detectives show up, and they're like, "Are you Edith Cushing? You got to come with me." And they want her to identify her father's dead body. And when she's about to, suddenly Alan runs into the room, and he says, I'm his doctor. I can identify the body. You don't need to make her look at that. And his lawyer says, "No, I'm sorry, she has to look at it."
He's an eye doctor.
Yeah. But he is his doctor.
He's not a real doctor.
She has identified her father's corpse. And then at her dad's funeral, she is now wearing the red ring that Thomas got from Lucille earlier.
Ew. I hate this guy.
Red ring.
This signals to us that she and Thomas have gotten married. She moves into his old house in Cumberland, England, called Allerdale Hall.
Poor choice.
This place is a little bit strange because the road up there is made of red clay, and when you step on the floorboards, red clay seeps through, and there's a hole in the ceiling through which it's snowing, and it's this gorgeous old mansion, but it's falling apart. And when she comes
through the ceiling,
why are they living there? I don't understand.
It's muddy as fuck on the floors.
Because they are tied to it.
As
it
fuck.
Is their heritage, and it sucks. He says that it's a privilege we were born into and one we can never relinquish, and he can't afford to fix it up. That's part of why he's trying to get this clay thing off the ground. And as she's coming in, he introduces her to the gamekeeper, who's this old man named Billy, And he says, like, oh, this is my wife. And Billy says, oh, I know. You've been married quite a while, sir. And
Ooh.
And then she
Is that
finds
like a
this
hint
dog.
at something? What is that? What does that mean?
Nah, that's a good question. She finds a dog, and Thomas doesn't know where this dog came from. It's a little Papillon. And
Wait, what kind of? I don't know. What kind? I don't know dogs. What is that? Is that like?
It's a
what does that
small
dog
yappy
look like?
dog with big ears.
Oh, the worst kind of dog. Okay.
And she finds one of these and does not know where it came from. Thomas has no clue. And there are dead bugs in the windows. Big old dead bugs. And when she comes in, she thinks she sees the figure of a woman going into the elevator. And then the elevator kind of taking off on its own. But Thomas doesn't know who it could have been. If it was Lucille, that doesn't make sense because Lucille is downstairs with her. And
this is in their house? There's an elevator?
Is that a ghosty ghost?
Maybe.
Is that the past?
Maybe. All right.
She asks Lucille, hey, can I have a copy of like all the house keys? And Lucille's like, no, that won't be necessary. You don't need your own keys. There are some rooms that you don't have access to. Like, you can't go down to the basement. It's not safe. But everything...
I'm sorry, but she just married this dude. Lucille is like, she has no claim anymore.
Oh, yeah, and Lucille still lives with them, by the way.
Edith's the lady of the house now.
Yuck.
Mm-hmm. And
why does she live
Lucille
with them?
makes her some tea. And then we see Lucille and Thomas making the tea. They're sitting at this table and they're like brewing tea really quickly. And Lucille says, how did that dog get in? Isn't it supposed to be dead? And Thomas says, I guess it survived somehow. All the while we've been in America, that dog's still been around. And Lucille says, well, you chose her. I hope you know what you're doing. So then we see Lucille's... What are they talking about? Edith is taking a bath, and this ghost peeks into the bathroom. Peeks like right around the door. And the
ghosts in bathrooms are the worst, especially in the shower and the bath.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm not done. This ghost is bright red. It's missing several fingers, and its forehead is gone. It's just got this giant wound that's most of its face. The eyes and forehead are just bashed in. No, it's not her dad. It's not her dad. It's missing a couple of fingers, and it looks like a lady ghost.
Another foreheadless person?
Another foreheadless person.
Ooh, it's a lady ghost.
It's their trademark. That's how they kill their people.
I can picture it in my head because it's very... There's something about something having no fucking eyes that is Guillermo del Toro's like motif.
He likes eyes not where they should be and sometimes where they shouldn't be. Like in the pale man from Pan's Labyrinth, his eyes are in the palms of his hands, and that was fucked up.
Ew.
That was fucked up.
That's some gross shit.
So they make Edith... So Edith drinks the tea.
So she sees this fucking... Wait a second.
No, she doesn't see it.
She just saw this ghost.
She doesn't see it.
Oh.
It's there, but she misses it.
That's interesting. So
the thing just peeks at her.
We, the audience, see it, but she doesn't. Ooh, that's always scary.
And they tell her that, like, she's going to hear... The house is so, like, drafty that it sounds like it's breathing all the time as the air moves around in it, and that's weird. And...
That's weird.
And so she's lying in bed next to her husband, and he says, like, well, I'm going to take a bath, and if you fall asleep while I'm there, I won't blame you. And we pan out, and we see that Lucille is peeping through the keyhole at both of them. Which is also weird.
Ooh.
Weird. What the fuck?
Lucille.
Edith wakes up the next morning. Thomas is asleep in bed next to her. I guess she fell asleep waiting for him to come back from the bath. And she goes downstairs and she finds Lucille's playing piano, and she's surrounded by all these little clockwork devices, and she says, like, oh, Thomas invented these things, actually. He made them as toys when we were kids. He's really good at this kind of thing. And on the picture, on the wall...
Are they all made of clay?
No, they're like little Victorian, creepy clockwork toys.
Oh. I just picture him running around being like, why does no one want my clay? I love clay so much.
And on the wall, there's this gigantic, terrifying portrait that is of their mother, who is now dead. And she looks really nuts.
Dead mother.
She looks really nuts, and she's wearing the red ring in the portrait.
Oh, fuck, no.
So the ring is...
Oh, my God. They're going to have her inhabit this chick. Yeah.
The ring is a Horcrux, right?
The ring has clearly been in their family for a little while. And Lucille says, like, she was kind of nuts, actually, and we actually weren't allowed in most of the house when we were kids. We were locked up in the attic, but we could hear her down here playing the piano. And I leave her portrait up there because I don't want her to miss a single thing that we do. I want her to see everything.
Weird.
Ooh.
And she shows
so
Edith...
It sounds like Lucille's the bad person in this movie, the bad guy, the bad woman.
And she shows Edith a book. And the book has like these... If you look at it sideways and you tilt the pages a certain way, there's this like lewd Japanese woodcut of two people 69ing. And she says, like, you see there's secrets everywhere. Look at all these dirty books. But I bet that won't offend you because, like, you're a married woman. You know what's up. And Edith says, well, actually, the whole time we were in America and on the boat across the ocean, Thomas was very respectful of my mourning period, and we had separate cabins. So I actually have no idea what's going on in this picture.
She's like, I haven't seen his dick.
Yeah,
not yet.
So they have not fucked. Meanwhile, back in Buffalo, Alan is cleaning up Dad's old stuff in his office, and he finds Dad's checkbook, and he sees the check stubs from the check he wrote to Thomas. And then he goes to the sink where Dad died, and he has a look at that, and he's like, I don't know. Supposedly he slipped and fell, but I don't know. Back in England, Edith has started to bond with that little dog. She's made friends with the dog, and she goes up to the nursery in the attic.
What's the dog's name?
It doesn't have a name.
Oh.
She goes up to the attic, moths everywhere, of course.
Is it Crimson Peak? Sorry.
No.
Fuck, Will.
No. Sorry. And she hears like the sound of a woman crying. And there's an old wheelchair there. And she walks past the wheelchair, and just as she does, we see this like vague, shadowy figure appear in it for a second, and it's pointing somewhere. But she doesn't see where. And she gets up to Thomas's workshop where he does all of his steampunk inventions. And Thomas is up there, and he says,
before
like,
it was steampunk.
Yeah, it's 1901, so it's, like weird clockwork. And Thomas says that they used to have a lot of money. Their dad wasted the whole family fortune. And Lucille played the piano. She had this lullaby she'd sing to him when they were kids. And that's the music we heard at the very beginning of the movie, the scary child singing we learned. And then he and Edith start making out pretty intensely, and he says, like, oh, you're so different from everybody. And they start making out, and then Lucille walks in with tea, fucking cock-blocking him.
Fucking cock-blocking.
She brings tea.
What's she doing
Edith.
there?
Bring in the tea. You gotta have the tea. Thomas doesn't have anyone but Edith.
So stressed out.
So then Edith wakes up alone the next night. Where's Thomas? I don't know. And she walks down the hallway, and she hears these weird noises that she thinks is the dog locked inside of a closet. But just as she's opening the closet, the dog runs down the hallway. And then a scary ghost face pokes out of the closet.
Ooh. That she doesn't see, or that
she does not see it. She does not.
Oh, my God.
But
she is just
Okay.
She does know the door is
Fuck
behaving
this, man.
really weird, and I think she sees like one of its fingers, like curling around the edge of the door.
Ooh.
But inside the door, she
I mean, I
finds a
guess
bunch.
she
this
can't see the
shit,
ghosts
man.
because they're metaphors. So
Fuck.
I think you're replying that line.
The wall's not close enough.
Inside of the closet, she finds a bunch of old wax cylinders. And then suddenly she sees another ghost crawling along the floor toward her. And this one doesn't have legs, and it's just crawling, and it chases her.
Fuck, you
Oh.
guys. No,
And it's-
I've got windows at this place, man. I can't see what's outside.
It's bright red like the clay, and it's crawling toward her, and it chases her down to the basement.
Oh.
She takes an elevator down to the basement
No.
where she's not supposed to go. And there's these big wells that
Oh,
are
no.
full of the red clay down there. And there's also a big steamer trunk
No.
that says ES on it. And on the lock,
Ooh.
there's the word
Edith Sharp.
on the lock is the word Enola. And then we see
Enola.
outside, Thomas
Ooh.
has made his machine full size. It's digging up clay. And he accidentally burns his hand with it. So Edith starts bandaging him. And he says, like, oh, my hands are getting rough now. Your father would have approved of this. And she says, has anyone died in this house? And he says, like, oh, yeah, it's an old house. I'm sure lots of people have died. And she says, no, but like in weird, violent ways. Is there any reason that there should be a ghost?
Yeah.
And he says,
Ooh.
Well,
is
I
this
hope
the first
not.
time she's brought up ghosts, or?
it is. Or at least outside of in her novel. And
Right.
ghost is a real thing. And he
Ooh.
says, you know, when it snows here, the snow leaches into the clay, and the whole hill turns bright red. And so all the villagers call the place Crimson Peak. Oh, shit.
Ooh, the name
And
of the movie.
She is
Again.
not happy to hear that because her mom told her not to go there. Meanwhile, back in Buffalo,
fuck. Right. That's right.
Alan is meeting with her dad's lawyer, Mr. Ferguson, who says that she's asked for all the money to be transferred over to her and her new husband, so that's kind of what I got to do. And Alan says, I don't know, this whole thing feels weird to me. And Ferguson says, yeah, actually, I know that before her dad died, he was in touch with a detective named Holly. And I've heard about this Holly guy, and he's always digging up these horrible scandals. So I'm a little concerned if he's involved. The whole thing just gives me pause. And Alan says,
Ooh.
can you get me
What's
Holly's
the
contact
scandal?
information? I'd love to talk to him.
Oh,
Meanwhile,
man.
back in England, Edith has a dream where she's in the middle of a field, and there's a scary red ghost who's pointing somewhere. And she wakes up and she's coughing
They're
up
always
blood.
pointing somewhere.
They're always pointing somewhere.
Ooh.
And she wakes up and she's coughing up blood. And she, this being this kind of movie, decides, I better go for a walk in the middle of the night through this old scary house. And she's looking and she starts saying, like,
I'm sorry,
If-
that's like the last thought on my mind ever in any
yeah.
house. Scary or not scary, I'm not going for a walk in a house in the middle of the night.
Yeah, fuck
just-
that.
It's just, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to get either hurt by a ghost or hurt by the homeowner. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, it is her house, but she's
Oh, that's
and
true.
she says, like, ghosts, if you're here, ghosts, please give me a sign. And the ghost, like, grabs her hand and throws her onto the floor. And then she hears the sound of a woman screaming and a stabbing sound. And then
Oh, no.
she walks back into the bathroom where she took her bath, and now there's a ghost in the tub. And this ghost has a ghostly...
Ghost.
What?
It's got a ghost butcher knife through its skull. And this ghost is bright red.
Fuck's
Ugh.
sake.
And it looks up at her
Why are they
and
all red?
And she
Man.
sees
of
this
the ghosts are red.
ghost this time.
She sees this one, and the ghost says,
Okay.
Edith, his blood will be on your hands. And that scares her. And
Whose
then,
blood? Oh, her father's blood?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
And then the next day she's having tea with the Sharpsie, and a lot of tea. And Thomas says, like, hey, I need to go to the post office to pick up some parts for my machine. You want to come with me? Let's get out of the house for a bit. And
Yeah, get
Edith
the fuck out of that
says,
house.
like, honestly, I want to get out of this house in general. And Lucille says, but you have nowhere else to go. This house is your home now. And
why is
No.
why is Lucille so fucking creepy?
They both are.
she's weird.
I mean, he's not as
No.
he doesn't sound as creepy. She sounds a little
They're in it together, though.
effed in that age.
They're in it together.
I don't know about in the A. That's not appropriate.
Sorry, I didn't mean to say effed in the A. I say effed in the
Sure.
Not that kind of movie. So the other thing that's arrived at the post office, other than his machine parts, are the final papers from Mr. Ferguson, the lawyer, that she has to sign to do the final transfer of all her father's wealth over to her husband's estate. But when they arrive at the post
No,
office,
Don't do it.
The postman says, like, oh, and there's another letter for you, all the way from Milan, Italy. And
Weird.
why would there be a...
Ooh,
And she
we
looks at it
haven't
and...
mentioned Milan before, have we?
No.
Have we? She looks at it and
No.
she
Oh,
sees
wait.
it's addressed to Lady E. Sharp, so that's her, right? And
Right.
then
Oh.
they get snowed in at the post office. And by the way, the post office is Black
No.
Creek Pioneer Village. If you've ever been
Oh,
up
is
there,
it?
that's where they filmed that. So
Alright.
she and Thomas is like, okay, we'll have to like get a room at the inn here in town. Then we can't get back to the house tonight. So they take this little room
Thank
at the inn,
God.
and he's flipping through her manuscript, and he says, "I like the main character of your book. This Cavendish guy. He's got a darkness to him. I like him. Does he live?" And she says, "I don't know. I don't know yet. I haven't decided. Sometimes these characters really change, and they surprise me." And then they fuck.
Mm.
They finally fuck.
Oh, for the
Okay.
first time.
Wow. How long have they been
Yep.
married for
Feels
now?
like the first
A couple of nights.
time.
Well, no, since they
Oh.
got married in America, so quite a while now. And
Yeah, a
then,
whole
Okay.
ship ride to England.
yeah, they had different cabins. So then, back with Alan in America, he meets with Holly, who gives him a copy of the same envelope that he gave the dad. And this time we see a little bit what's inside it. There's a newspaper that says something about a murder, but also there is a marriage certificate, or a marriage license. And Holly says that, her dad was not happy to learn that Mr. Sharp is already married.
To his sister. It's
Ooh.
Lucille's not his sister. It's his wife. I'm stressed. Continue.
Okay.
No,
so they
but
go
who is
home.
this Elon? Elon Musk, right?
Oh. No.
Enola?
Okay. Okay.
Oh, Enola.
So
I thought it was Elon.
Huh.
Enola, that's what I meant. Enola.
okay.
So, they get
So
back to
that's
the
what
house
he
in the
found.
morning.
Okay.
In the morning, they get back to the house, and Lucille freaks the fuck out. She's like, you were alone out there, and I was scared. I didn't know what had happened. I thought maybe you'd been in an accident and you were hurt. And I don't want to be alone. It's bad for me. I'll go make tea. So she makes some tea again.
Mm.
And while she's
They
making
fucking
What's
love
tea,
their
her
tea.
British people love their tea. Edith is like rifling through Lucille's keys, and she sees one of them says Enola in the exact same font that the trunk downstairs says it. So she quietly pilfers that key, and then she goes off and she reads the letter she got from Italy, but she can't read it because it's in Italian. But it is addressed to
Right.
an Enola Sciatti. She
Yep.
goes down.
Sciatti.
Not
Sciatti.
even sharp.
Confused.
She goes downstairs and she opens up the trunk with the key. And inside she finds a gramophone player, a bunch of documents, and some old photographs. And the documents have 3 names on them. They are Enola Sciatti from Milan, Italy, Margaret McDermott from Edinburgh, Scotland, and Pamela Upton from London, England.
No.
And then she
His
flashes back to
wives.
she flashes back to something her dad said You've been to Milan, Edinburgh, London, and now you're here. And also, before she leaves the basement, I mentioned those big wells full of red clay. She kind of pokes around in one of those for a second, and she leaves just before a dead body floats up. That is very clearly the one that she didn't see when she was taking a bath with no forehead and its fingers are missing. And now we get a better look at its hands, and we see that it's missing its ring finger.
Ooh,
Oh, the sister
the one
wants
that
her
had the
ring
big
back.
red wing.
Oh my god.
Oh, shit.
Let's see.
But why?
Okay, so then Thomas wants to show Edith his cool new machine that he's built because he's got the parts now, and Lucille is bothered by this. Like, why do you care about her seeing your machine? And he says, like,
oh no, it's my wife. Fuck.
Can you loan me the key to the coal shed? I need to get more coal for my machine. And Lucille's looking through her keys, and she realizes the Enola key is gone.
Yeah.
And so she goes inside, and she finds Edith, who's sitting down in a chair. And Edith has very quickly hid everything she found underneath her gigantic billowy dress.
Oh my god!
Just shoved it right up there.
Lucille says, "I'm sorry, I freaked out earlier. I was scared. I'm gonna go make some tea, and I'll get those papers for you to sign."
Stop.
And while she's doing that,
with the tea,
Edith takes a moment to like put her key back on the ring, so that Lucille won't notice. Except that she does, because Lucille left the key ring on the table as a trap to see if Edith would.
Ooh.
And now she knows that Edith is onto her. So,
oh no!
Edith found a gramophone in the trunk downstairs, and she goes and gets those wax cylinders that were in the closet, and she plays them while she's looking
What's
through
a gramophone?
Gramophone, yes.
It's like an
What
is that?
old-fashioned. It's like an old-fashioned record player, but older.
Okay,
Before
so
there were
the
records,
wax-
there were wax cylinders, which...
And that plays music or sound.
Yeah, and she very helpfully, upon finding them, tells us, the audience, ooh, old recording wax cylinders, because we wouldn't know what those look like.
No.
Fair.
And she's looking through
I can
the pictures.
picture them, though. They look
She's looking
like
through
cylinders made of clay, right?
It's not clay, it's wax.
I know, but they look like it could be clay, right? I don't know.
No, I think they're kind of green. They're not red.
Oh, okay.
And the wax cylinder has a recording of Pamela Upton, who is an English woman who says, like, oh, I do love recording. Here I am with my darling husband, Thomas, making a recording. Thomas, say something.
No.
And it's clearly the same Thomas, and he starts reciting a scary nursery rhyme.
Why the fuck would he do that?
Ding dong dell, kitties in the well. And she's looking through the photos, and she sees pictures of Thomas with 3 different women she doesn't recognize.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is in that wheelchair we saw earlier in some of these pictures. And she sees one of these women has that same dog that she saw earlier.
No.
And there's another picture of one of these women who's holding a baby.
Oh no!
Oh,
And
not a baby.
As the recording keeps going on, she hears Pamela continue to talk, and she says, like, I'm getting sick, and I'm starting to realize why. They did this to me. There's poison in the tea.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's... I would not... I didn't actually not predict that.
And then she passes
Always
out.
with the fucking tea.
She passes out and wakes up, and she's in her bed, and Lucille is standing over her, and she says, here, have some tea.
Oh, tea.
So Lucille says, okay, have some tea, which she politely declines. And Lucille then, like, leans into her and says, like, our dad was crazy. He broke our mom's leg once. We could hear him. But I took care of Mom, and I rubbed ointment into her leg, and I fed her, and I washed her while she was bedridden, and I'll do the same for you. I'm gonna make you get better. And
Ooh.
Edith is not reassured. And then Thomas comes in and he says, like, hey, can I have a loan with my wife? And he says to her, we've got a wheelchair for you while you get better.
Why? Oh, so she's sick. She's ill?
Not doing so great. And
What's
then he
going
says,
on?
He takes the teacup and he says, don't drink this.
Okay.
Don't drink this.
Ooh. So he knows, but he's like,
don't do
he's
it.
playing good cop, bad cop going on here.
Maybe.
He wants
And
some
then he goes
Stockholm
downstairs.
syndrome.
He goes downstairs where Lucille's playing piano again. She's playing that same creepy melody from the beginning. And he says to her, you know, she's dying. And Elle says, yeah, of course she is. We've been poisoning her. And he says, well, she didn't drink the tea. And Lucille says, no, it's okay. I gave her some poison porridge.
What the fuck? Why do they do this?
Fuck.
It's pretty clear that Thomas is having second thoughts here. And Lucille says, like,
what the
yeah,
fuck
well,
is going
we can't, what else are we going to do? Like, if we stop, you'll get hanged and I'll go to jail forever. So we're kind of stuck together. And then they give each other a really intense look. Meanwhile,
like a sexy look or just an intense look?
Ambiguous.
So many. Oh god.
Meanwhile, who should show up at the post office in town but Alan, who says, "Hey, can you give me directions to Allerdale Hall?" It's like, have you seen The Shining, Alenka?
I forget.
Okay.
Like I've seen it, but I forget it.
There's a similar subplot in The Shining of what Alan is doing this whole time.
Very good.
So he says, can someone give me directions to Allerdale Hall? And the guy tells him how to get there, and he says, all right, can anyone take me out there? And they say, like, no, we won't be able to get a wagon out there till morning, probably. And it's a 6-hour walk. So Alan says, okay, as soon as you can, go out there by morning. I'm going to walk right now. I better get started because the weather's terrible.
Oh, Jesus.
What a psychopath.
I'll walk 6 hours. I walk 6 hours all the time.
Oh, whatever, Will.
Yeah, but like in what kind of weather, Will?
Yeah.
All weather, you know, the snow,
weather.
the rain.
Wouldn't it be a twist if Alan was coming to kill her for friend zoning him? If he was a murderer.
That'd be really
himself.
funny.
It's
Really
like, you can't
funny.
kill her. I want to kill her.
I'm also evil. Edith starts vomiting up blood. She's rolling around in the wheelchair, vomiting up blood, and then she sees a big red ghost appear right in the middle of the hall. And
Big
this
old
ghost.
Ooh.
Yep, and this ghost is holding a little red ghost baby.
No. Fuck,
ew,
no.
God. Like, what do they like?
No.
Describe kind of like fully what they look like. Are they
They
like
look-
Inside Out people or?
They look,
No.
I mean, they're red. They look like either they're covered in blood or like they're made of the clay. They're kind of-
clay
They're
ghosts.
a little bit blurry. Like, they're played by actors in costume, but there's kind of a CGI blur over them to make them look a little unearthly. And some of them
Ghosty.
seem to have like blood, as if they're like floating in water, like the blood is kind of rippling around them.
Oh, weird.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a super cool effect.
Ugh. Okay.
And
Fuck.
and then the ghost,
I
she
wanna
says
see
to the
this.
ghost, I figured out who you are. I know who you are. Your name is Enola Shoddy, isn't it? What do you
Shoddy.
want? Shoddy! And the ghost points.
Shoddy.
The ghost points, like they always do, toward a door.
Yep.
And Edith goes through the door, and it leads into Lucille's
Fuck.
bedroom.
Fuck,
And-
I hate this shit.
Ooh.
Inside Lucille's bedroom, she finds Thomas and Lucille making out. She's got her hand down his
Knew it.
pants.
Oh.
Yep.
Ew.
You did call it, Alenka. You were like, that's his wife, but it's not really his wife. It's still his sister, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh.
They-
She says, like, I knew it. You're not really his sister at all, are you? And she says, like, no, yeah, I am. And then she throws Edith down the stairs.
We is.
So casually. No,
I mean,
we are.
Not
I
quite
am.
the way I said it.
Have a good flight, bitch.
Yeah, throws her down the stairs. And then Lucille wakes up. She wakes up a lot in this movie. A lot of scenes of her waking up.
And
And
making
Because she just doesn't die, you know?
but this time guess who's standing over her and telling her she's going to be okay? It's Alan.
Oh no.
No.
I thought it was gonna be Doug Jones.
No,
Stop.
I think Doug Jones was the ghost with the butcher knife through its head in the bathtub, but I'm not sure. And so when Alan is tending to her, the sharps are all like, "Oh, she fell down the stairs. We were so worried. Thank heaven you're here."
Wait.
And
Sorry. So Lucille
Mhm.
didn't fall.
no, Edith fell.
No, Edith fell down
Edith
the
fell.
stairs.
And
The good
Edith woke up.
And Alan is
Not
like
Lucille.
tending to her wound. And he
Okay.
says,
Yeah, is her wound in her eyes? Come on now.
well, she fell down the stairs. He's not just an ophthalmologist. He's also just an all-purpose doctor, which I guess they kind of had to be back then.
Oh, I guess so.
And he says to her, "Here, have some tea." And she's like, "No, I can't. It's poison." And he whispers
Okay.
to her like, "I know, you're not safe here. We're getting out of here.
Oh my God.
We're getting out of here as
he's
soon
on
as we
the-
can."
He's on the level.
Okay.
While that's happening, Lucille runs to the kitchen, gets a big knife, and gives it to Thomas, and she says,
No.
"Is it going to be you
No.
this time? I'm sick of this. I'm sick of doing it myself. You should do this."
Why the fuck do they do this shit though?
And they come back out and they confront Alan, and they're like, "You can't take her out of here." And Alan says, "Oh, yes, I can, because she's not safe here." And he reveals some of the stuff he read in that newspaper clipping, which is when Thomas was 12 and Lucille was 16, their mother was
They chopped their
murdered.
mom's legs off.
I mean, no one was ever arrested on this charge, but someone put a butcher knife through Mom's head while she was taking a bath. And they were the
Oh,
only people in the house at the
someone.
time, but they were never charged
was a
because
spooky ghost.
the only
It was
explanation
Lucille.
was too horrible to contemplate. Yeah, it was totally Lucille.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're murderous little fucks.
And he says, like, after that happened, Thomas went away to boarding school, didn't he? And Lucille went to a convent in Switzerland, but I don't think it was a convent. I think it was a different kind of institution. And also, you should know, Edith, Thomas has already been married 3 times. And he is like, yeah, I know. I know about Enola and Pamela
Little
and
late.
Margaret. I know that one. So
She's like, keep going.
Alan's like, all right, so I'm taking her out of here now. And Lucille walks up and stabs him. She
What
stabs
the
him.
fuck?
She stabs him in his fucking armpit.
Ew.
that's
Oh,
lame.
ow. Ooh,
He's stumbling around in the door, and then she gives the knife to Thomas and says, like, okay, finish him off. And then she walks off, and we hear the dog start to whimper, and then a cracking sound, and the dog is quiet.
No.
Oh,
No.
you can't. No, you
Yeah.
can't kill the dog. That makes them. I'm like,
So what's
I'm more
with this
upset about the
Lucille
dog.
bitch?
She
I'm-
really
like, what's her
likes-
deal?
She likes having sex with her brother and doing incests.
and the murdering. Don't forget
And-
about the
yeah,
murdering.
but I'm more like,
Yeah, she also likes
why
murder.
is she? So why does he go out to find a wife just to bring home so that she
Money.
can kill them?
Money.
Oh,
So money for the clay, and then
For the-
murder for the fun. Is that what
Because
it
they
is?
got to get rid of these women somehow. He can't stay married to someone
This
who isn't
is
his sister. That'd be weird.
bullshit.
But like,
Right.
he already got the money from her dad before they got
The
married.
That's
bribe
true.
wasn't enough to cover it. It was just like a little enough to get him to go
Oh.
away.
Oh,
He needed more
because
money.
now she gets all. She's like inherited
Yeah,
all
yeah.
his. Oh, okay.
Oh my god.
And so Edith's like, "You're monsters, both of you." And Lucille says, like, "Funny, that's exactly what Mother said before we killed her."
When they were
And-
6 and 12,
12 and 16.
why'd they kill their mom?
Because
I mean, she called them monsters.
because she found out about them.
About they were doing it then?
Yeah,
Oh my god.
when he
Like
was
the
12 and she
G-rated,
was
they were just
16.
like- They were just like kissing.
That's
Oh, I
fucked
think
up.
I don't know.
So this is
And
just
so
a
Tom-
movie about incest.
Well, there is some
It's not
incest.
a love story.
It's not an incest story. It's a story with incest in it.
Oh, okay.
Incest is a metaphor for the past.
It's not.
Everything's a metaphor for incest, right? That's what it is.
Oh, okay, Freud. No, Freud thought incest was a metaphor for something else.
Okay.
So, Thomas is pointing the big knife at Alan, and he says, like, he whispers to him, okay, if I don't stab you, she's going to stab you, but you're a doctor, so, like, show me where to stab you.
Huh.
And so Alan guides his hand to, like, somewhere down his thigh, and he stabs him, and then he carries him down to the basement, and he says, like, okay, this basement, there's a mine shaft that leads up to the surface, so you can get out that way. I don't want to kill you. But there's some legal papers upstairs that Lucille's going to make Edith sign, and once Edith signs them, she's dead. Because once she signs them, we legally have her money.
Yep.
Back upstairs, Lucille grabs Edith's manuscript and throws it in the fire and says, like, this is bad writing. You're a sentimental.
This is bad.
This is just bad.
Okay.
Do you think that's how that's how real publishers do it? They're just like, I'm throwing it in the fire. It's sentimental. Write me something new.
Oh, like, give me a new one.
And here's where she finally explains kind of that she and Thomas, she thinks, always have to be together. And but Edith made things weird because Thomas had sex with her, and he never had sex with any of the other women he was married to. And no one missed these women because they didn't have any family. It was basically a mercy killing. And Edith says, well, what about the baby? Enola had a baby. And Lucille says, no. I had the baby. That was my baby.
Oh.
But it had health problems because it was so inbred.
Oh,
and Enola was trying to take care of the baby and make it better, but she couldn't. And so the baby died, and so did Enola. And Lucille, like, cuts off a lock of Edith's hair, and she braids it and puts it into a little, like, cupboard next to hair braids from presumably all of her previous victims.
Oh, that's like Dexter shit right there.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And yeah, she says, like, we killed Mom when she found out about us, and we've always got to be together. And Edith says, I don't think Thomas is as happy as you think he is. I think you're suffocating him. And that makes Lucille freak the fuck out. And she's like, sign your goddamn name on this paper. And then I'll kill you like I killed your dad. And we get a flashback, and we see that it was Lucille who bashed Dad's head in.
Your dad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, so
he was such a douche.
She wants her to sign this paper.
Can't they just forge it?
Yeah, I'm like, they kill people. They're murdering people. But they're like, we have to have the real legal signature on this fucking piece of paper.
Yeah, they got to inherit it.
They got to inherit it.
But they fucking sign something like, there, that's her signature.
Yeah.
I don't know. Apparently they had pretty good.
Not they're just a couple kids that just think doing it is just so grand that they need to kill everyone because they just don't think they could possibly do it with another person.
Well, because Edith said at the beginning, like, my handwriting is so feminine, it gives me away. So,
so it's very important detail.
And she does sign her name here with the pen her dad gave her, in fact. But then she unscrews it and stabs Lucille in the neck.
I knew it.
Yes.
Knew it.
Pen stabbing
her dad gave her.
We had a pen stabbing last movie, didn't we?
I don't remember.
What did you watch last movie? Red Eye?
Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That movie's great.
Is there a pen stabbing?
No. He uses the cap of the pen to take his handcuffs off.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's a pen, though.
It's a pen.
And so she runs out while Lucille's bleeding all over the place. And in the elevator, she runs into Thomas. And she says, like, you lied to me. And he's like, yes, I did. And she says, you poisoned me. And he says, yes, I did. And she says, you told me you loved me. And he said, I do love you. I didn't love the other ones, but I love you. And I'm going to try to make this right.
Lord.
And so he lets her
He
go.
fucking killed people, man.
Oh yeah, he did. And he says, but I didn't kill Alan. He's alive and he's down in the basement. And it wasn't the plan. We were going to kill you. I wasn't supposed to fall in love with you, but I did. And I'm going to go get those papers back. And he runs into Lucille's room and he grabs the legal papers and he throws them in the fire.
Wow.
And then he says to Lucille, like, we can't keep doing this. I can't kill her. I love her. And Lucille says, but you weren't supposed to fall in love with anyone. You were only supposed to love me. And he says, yeah, but I did. And we don't need to kill her. We can all be together. Which is a terrible plan, by the way. Edith would never agree to that.
Yeah. That's not how you seduce Edith.
And Lucille doesn't agree to it either. And she stabs him in the face.
Oh, man. Come on.
And Thomas is dead.
Like, eye, forehead,
Cheekbone.
cheek. Ooh. Ow.
And then we see like his
That
eye
feels
get
like
all
it
bloody
hurts.
and he drops to the ground dead.
What the fuck, man?
And then Lucille and Edith kind of chase each other around the house for a little bit through the elevators. She's chasing
Catch me.
Lucille's chasing Edith in the elevator. Edith's in the elevator trying to get away from Lucille, who's chasing her down the stairs. And she gets down to the basement where she finds Alan, who is alive, and they hide behind a clay, one of the big wells. And Lucille says, like, I know you're down here somewhere, and I know there's another thing down here that you don't know about, and that is the original murder weapon. And she picks up one of the cobblestones of the floor, and underneath it is the butcher knife. And she's like, I got my first kill with this. I love it so much, this knife.
God.
I killed Mom. So then...
I killed her. All right.
This is sentimental, this knife.
Yeah. So Lucille's got this big kitchen knife that she grabbed on the way down, and they get into a knife fight, and they go up the mine shaft
no.
out into the snow. And they're fighting around Thomas's big clockwork machine. And Lucille loses her knife, but she grabs a big shovel. And Edith grabs the shovel. Lucille still got the butcher knife. And she keeps saying, like, I won't stop till you kill me or I kill you. And then Edith says, she looks up and she says, help me, please. And Lucille says, there's no one to help you. And Edith says, yes, there is. Look. And standing right behind Lucille is the ghost of Thomas.
What?
He is not bright red. He's white and pallid and just leaking blood out of his face where she stabbed him.
Fuck.
Weird.
And then
He's a memory.
Well, he's a proper ghost now.
Oh.
Well, no, he's dead. No, he's just genuinely a ghost.
And then Edith hits Lucille in the face with a shovel. And Lucille is down on the ground, and she's like, I won't stop until you kill me or I kill you. And then Edith says, like, yeah, I heard you the first time. And she smacks her with the shovel one last time, and she's dead.
That's so silly.
Woo!
It's like a Bond one-liner. It's like, I heard you the first time.
Guess you'll die another day.
So then she goes
Or
up
like
to Thomas's
old Victorian
ghost.
piano.
Oh, yeah. And you remember it was established earlier, Alan said, like, most people can't see ghosts. Thomas's ghost, Lucille could see. Lucille could see Thomas's ghost.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so Lucille could see all the other shit, too.
Maybe.
Most likely.
Or maybe she could only see this ghost because it's the only one she regretted killing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Fair.
Edith kind of says goodbye to Thomas's ghost, and he fades away and goes off to the afterlife.
As you do.
And then this is where the movie started. She's in the snow, and she's covered in blood. And she goes back inside, and she gets Alan, who is doing okay, all things considered. And they go down the road back to town, and on the way they see all the party from the post office that Alan said should head out the next time it's available. And then we go back inside the house, where we hear Edith's ghost reading this monologue. And if it's okay with you, I think I'd like to open the episode with this monologue. And she says, ghosts are real. This much I know. There are things that tie them to a place very much like they do us. Some remain tethered to a patch of land, a time and date, the spilling of blood. a terrible crime. But there are others that hold on to an emotion, a drive, loss, revenge, or love. Those, they never go away. And as we move through the house, we see the ghost of Lucille playing the piano.
No.
The end. And then as the credits roll, we see, you remember at the beginning we saw a book open that said Crimson Peak? Now we see the book close and it says Crimson Peak by Edith Cushing.
No way.
She wrote it. She wrote the book.
And
She
went
wrote-
back
so
to her
was it
maiden
all a
name,
book?
I guess.
Or was it real?
I think she turned it into a book and went back to her
Yeah.
maiden name.
Oh,
I thought you were
yeah.
gonna
As she
say,
would.
and then as the credits roll, it's just a bunch of bloopers of Doug Jones
Stop.
in ghost
Walking
costume.
into things.
Yeah.
I can't see in this thing.
Oopsie. Where's my guide?
I wish I had eyes on my hands.
Yeah.
True.
That
Like
other
the Pale Man
movie.
costume, he had to see out of that thing's nostrils, so he couldn't see
Right.
90% of the time, right?
Good Lord. I'm just going to
Yeah.
give it the 3. I guess it's the 3 out of 3 red ghosts, 1 out of 2 black
4 red
ghosts,
ghosts.
and one white ghost. But I would say it's 3 red ghosts and maybe 1 gray ghost because we're mixing the black and the white.
It's great.
So
that's a
that's
great
my-
interpretation of all the ghosts.
Okay,
Yeah.
that is not a
What about
complicated
you,
rating
Will?
system at all. Makes
Well-
perfect sense.
I think I don't know. I think I give this 5 incest out of 5. You know,
You
Just-
forgot about that incest.
just get that brother sister loving going on.
No, what's
Yeah,
wrong
it's-
with you?
It's fucked up.
Danny,
Thank you
where-
for fucking
thank you for
traumatizing
joining
me.
us. Yeah.
Thank you for hosting me. This has been really
Where-
fun, and I
yeah.
love this movie, so I love talking about it.
Yeah.
Where can our listeners find you if they want to hear more of you?
Yeah. So on Twitter, you can find me at Mutant Museum, all one word.
Nice.
On YouTube, Mutant Museum, which I want to double check. Is that all one word or 2 words? I think
It
that's
is,
2.
I believe so.
It's 2 words on my YouTube, yes. And I'm currently, the main thing I do on my YouTube channel is I do dramatic readings of bad fan fiction. I'm currently about halfway through Trapped in an Island with Josh Hutcherson. As of this recording, anyway.
So
I listened to a bit of it. It's quite hilarious.
Thank
so
you.
funny. I love it.
And on Instagram, you can find me at Danny Can't Draw Well, all one word, where I post drawings I do that aren't very good. And cat pictures.
That's great.
Well,
Aw.
if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Haven't Seen a Podcast, on Twitter at haven't_seen_it. And you can go to our website, www.haven'tseenapodcast.com. You'll find all our episodes, pictures of our guests, and the giant list of movies Alenka hasn't seen.
Are those all guaranteed to be upcoming episodes, or?
Pretty much.
I would
We're
hope
just going to
so,
go
yeah.
through that whole list. And
You
we're,
just got to
we're
find the
always
right
adding to it.
person.
Yeah.
you know?
All right, I will look
Gotta
forward.
find that person that's just like loves their movie. Okay, you guys, just thank you. Don't have regrets in life. Just do what you want, but don't fuck your siblings. But also keep watching and listening to the podcast, and just get into your bed and sleep nicely, please.
Without
Goodbye.
your sibling in the bed.
Yeah. Go to bed. No siblings with you. That's it. Good night.